Okay, here we are. It's from the ground up. John Boyd, not your host here. Today, we're joined by Jim Alkove of Oleria. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good morning. I'm super excited to be here. I'm having a great day and to talk to you about sort of my journey and also what we're doing at Olyria, a company that's really out there to solve how companies provide access to their employees and software to information.
Yeah, looking forward to it. There's a lot of, as we talked about before the show started, there's a lot of learning that can take place in good conversation about your background and where you've been and the company that you started now. Tell us about yourself and Oleria.
Great. Well, thank you again for the opportunity. I am the co-founder and CEO here at Olyria. Again, we're in the identity security solution space, really trying to use data and AI to help really manage access in a much more secure and cost-effective way for enterprise organizations. So think large companies, 1,000+ employees. I am a startup co-founder, but I started my life in big technology. After growing up in the Midwest, I spent 17 years at Microsoft in a variety of roles. Moved on and spent some time at Google, working on Internet of Things technology with Google Nest, and then wrapped up my large company career with the honor of being the chief trust officer at Salesforce. For about 5.5 years. And so I've had the chance to work in some amazing big companies, some of the best in the world, and learned an enormous amount there that helped me on my journey, but also had to learn a lot more as I started building from the small, from scratch.
Yeah. So you're with Olyria now, and identity is the big area that you're working in. And tell us about the goals of Olyria and what you guys are working on these days.
Well, I think that first we have to think about the fundamental business challenge, which is that organizations, businesses, governments need to enable people or artificial intelligence to have access to information or systems in order to do their job. It allows us to achieve business outcomes and it creates security risk for organizations. And so, but the technologies, I started this company because of recognition, sort of as a CISO, as a leader of security for large companies like Microsoft and Salesforce, that the way large organizations were providing access to employees and software was just fundamentally broken in two different ways. One, it was leaving vast amounts of information accessible to people who didn't need that access, and therefore creating security risk. And it was costing companies an enormous amount of money to manage access. And so when after retiring, I sort of set my sights on really leaving the world with something better. And Oleria's mission in life is to fundamentally change the way identity access management works through a new platform enabled by rich data and artificial intelligence.
That's great. Yeah, was with working on what you're working on. Was there specific moment or incident from long ago in your prior portions of your career that caused you to say, "Hey, this is this is why I need to start a company like Olyria." What tell us about that. What was the impetus, or was there incidents that happened that caused you to feel like that this was something you should be doing?
So I think that there are two fundamental learnings that I had actually in two different points in my career that sort of combined to lead to the genesis of this idea and why I felt like this was where I needed to spend the last major mission in my career. And that's that one, I had the privilege of working on what's now called Windows Defender for Endpoint in Microsoft, which is Microsoft's endpoint security product for PCs, phones, devices, etc., and building that product from scratch. And one of the things I learned is that identity is a critical part of every sort of cyber attack. And that world, that has grown over the time from when I was at Microsoft to when I was at Salesforce, to the point that now identity is the most common way that an attacker gets in. Hackers don't hack in, they log in. And the second thing is that during my time at Salesforce, what I realized was that as a corporate, as an organization, the cost per employee for managing identity and access is just astronomical right now. And it is, next to sort of cyber threat detection, is sort of the next most expensive thing that a security the CISO actually has to spend money on, and that just doesn't need to be. The reality is technology today is enabling humans to solve a problem as opposed to the technology itself solving the problem. We need to move from a world of humans clicking buttons in software in order to manage identity to software doing it automatically. We say autonomously in the background. And that is the future. And if you think about where everything's going with AI today, more and more conversation is about how do we make systems solve problems for people while they sleep.
That's great. Yeah. And so that's, obviously I'm not an expert in managing identity in enterprises or in small companies, but, for me, with taking a look at the solution that Olyria provides, just give me a quick rundown of what exactly it's providing. It's a way to make this more automatic, something that people don't have to think about. Is it software? Just to go ahead and give me the rundown on that real quick.
So when you think, Olyria is a solution for managing access in your organization, and what we do is we come in and we connect to all of your systems, your identity provider, so something you use to log into your system, your HR system, all of your applications, the Salesforces, the ServiceNows, the Microsoft 365s, all your cloud infrastructure, so Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, AWS. And we bring all of that information about identity together from all those disparate places and give you one single point of visibility so you can see who has access to what, how did they get it, and what are they doing with it. And then you can also control that access. So you can manage, for example, removing access from users that they don't need anymore because they're not working on that project, or that they're not working in that part of the organization anymore. They don't need that access. You can control it. So single point of visibility, single point of control.
That's great. Thank you for giving us that rundown. Now you've led large teams in Microsoft, Google, big team over in Salesforce as well. What are making the transition? There's a lot of entrepreneurs who watch the show, and they're making a transition from having been an executive like that in a larger company, and they're going to create something that's smaller. What's sort of some of the big mindset reframing that you've had to do going from that position where you were to where you're at now?
Well, I think that when you become a very successful executive in big companies, you first of all you start making less big mistakes, and what you first have to do emotionally is get comfortable with the fact that you're starting in a different environment, and that your mistake velocity is going to increase. And that can
Mm.
be sort of really egoically challenging. And so, as an individual, you need to sort of prepare yourself for that and manage it, because actually mistake velocities is not something to be afraid of. It's something that you should embrace, because failure actually is a learning opportunity. And I think that is one of the biggest shifts I had to make, transitioning into this. I think the other one is just that you've got to be willing to rethink the way you accomplished many of the things in a large organization, because you become very good at resource management in a large organization. And when you're in a small organization, you don't have a large pool of resources to draw on to solve problems. You actually have to sort of creatively solve them with the constraints of a small set of team of more generalists. Like you have to, in a large company, you sort of get specialists to do each thing, and you orchestrate all of these specialists, and then you get success. That can't work in a startup. You can't afford to have all of those people. So what you need to be able to do is build a team of players who have a broad enough skill set that allows you to really do things differently. And again, this is about personal change. When you come from a large organization, you got to be willing to go through a lot of what I would say is pretty disruptive personal change as a founder if you're to be successful in a startup environment.
When you first got to this startup land, was it your first time running a startup? Was it sort of a return back to this, or was it brand new?
It was brand new. This is the first time I've worked in a startup. Now, I've worked in startup like teams in big companies, but that's a very different experience still than starting something from zero, filing the papers to start the company, and being the only person here when the lights turn on.
Can you see yourself eventually going back to the larger company positions someday, or you sort of found your happy place now more with startups? And if so, why?
Well, I think that um, you have to sit back and be open to all opportunities. When I think about the journey that we're on at Olyria, the goal is to accomplish the mission, which is that enterprise organizations can more effectively manage access and therefore get better business outcomes and better security outcomes. So you get more done for your business, you make more money, and you save the operational costs that people are overspending on today and identity. And while there's a path that we can deliver on that as we are today with our, today we've brought on two Fortune 500 companies, one of which who is the Fortune 10 as a customer of Olyria. And so we're seeing large companies see the value of what we're doing, and realizing that my experience in Microsoft, for example, tells me that from a go-to-market perspective, the impact of what we're doing can have a much broader scale impact on the world if it's partnered with a large team that can take it to a much broader audience faster. And so, as a founder who's looking at worldwide impact as my sort of ultimate mission, you have to be open to both of those: building a large company that can, on its own, deliver on that, and or potentially partnering with an organization for in whatever model to be able to do that. So I won't foreclose where I'll end up from here. What I'll say is this process has made me more malleable to change, and therefore being open to what it takes to win, regardless of what direction that takes us.
You've touched on this a bit already, but maybe go a little bit deeper on a lot of leaders out there think of identity, just employees and logins and stuff like that. And are there big blind spots? I'm sure there are that big companies out there have about managing identity and you guys fulfilling your mission by stepping in there. What are some of the big blind spots you see out there with some big companies?
Well, look, I think the blind spot is the great word for this. When we work with organizations, we see consistently that what organizations think, prospective organizations we talk to, what they think their identity infrastructure looks like and what it actually looks like, are very different. They have more accounts than they think they have. Their posture, meaning whether they have multi-factor authentication turned on everywhere that they think they do, is different in reality than what it is on paper in their organization. And that's where Olyria shines. We come in and we tell you exactly what's going on in your in your technology stack today, right this minute, within just a few minutes of setup. So it takes a half hour on a phone call to get Olyria up and running, and we can show you exactly what your world looks like. And therefore, you can see those blind spots right off, and we see it consistently. Disconnects in terms of vast numbers of accounts that people don't know they have, or for example, multi-factor authentication not enabled correctly or not at all on accounts that should have it.
Let's talk a little bit about your hiring, because that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs out there are looking for advice on or just insight on to see how they can do it better. Were there, as far as like culture from the early beginning, you mentioned how you sort of started, you're by yourself in the very beginning. What were some of the key things you were looking for from people who you were hiring when you first started, as far as culture goes? What values were non-negotiable? Talk to us about your thoughts and philosophy around that.
Yeah, so we're in the cybersecurity business. So there are a few things in a startup that you just need. You need people who are driven to get an outcome, people who have an owner's mindset, who really believe that they need to step in and actually they have a see something, do something kind of attitude. So the startup drive an employee, and that doesn't mean they have to have worked at a startup. It means they just have to be that kind of self-starting, very driven person in order to move forward. A startup, in a big company, there's a momentum. If you don't give it any direction, it may go the wrong direction, but it's going to keep going. In a startup, the natural inertia is nothing. So if everybody isn't driving every single day, the company doesn't move forward, and that means everyone needs to drive forward. So you need that energy in every person that you hire. You also need to be careful that you don't judge competence, especially when you're hiring people from big companies, that you don't judge previous like success and competence as something that people are going to be that's going to transition into your startup environment. So, one of the things that I'll say, happened to me as a founder was I knew a lot of the successes of people that I in my network that in previous big organizations, but those don't necessarily transition into working in a startup environment successfully. And so as someone coming from a big company environment, it's really important in hiring not to over rely on your network and maybe your relationship with people and how successful they were in a big company, and make assumption that that's going to transition to your startup environment, because it doesn't always happen.
Yeah. So you ended up picking some folks maybe you that would be unexpected and things of that nature. So it sounds like it was it was a learning and growth experience as you were doing it, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that what I'd say is culture and people are really important here, Olyria. It's a core value of ours. People is a core value right behind trust. And so when I interview people, the first thing I want to understand is that they're committed to trust. You can't be in the cybersecurity business if you don't put the trust of your customers and your employees at the top of your list. And culture and people, we wrote down the values and we worked out our culture before we started hiring people here at the company. And it's really important to me that the team feels like this is a place they can bring their full self to work and actually do the best work of their career. And we achieve the outcomes that we need to as a company. And so, yes, it was challenging. There are some folks who I have enormous respect for I think things don't work out in a startup environment. And also, we've had folks who have come in from big company environments and been some of our most incredible contributors. And I think that the mileage varies on an individual basis, which is why you have to interview each individual person and understand where people are in the arc of their career, and see whether that's going to fit with what you actually need as an organization.
Yeah, some fantastic insights on all of these subjects. Really appreciate what you're telling us. So, another question that I like to try and ask most of the founders that I talk to are sort of like like moments of conviction along the way where you had to make a hard call on people, positioning, product, anything at all that really tested your conviction about where the company was going. Uh, is there anything you can tell us about something along those lines where you were facing a decision that felt really sort of monumental at the time, and how did it go? How is
Well, I think the one that probably has continuously tested my conviction all along has been the decision to build the platform that we believe in as a company. We believe that ultimately this unifying platform is the secret to achieving the result that we're after. That takes conviction, because you have a lot of stakeholders who, if you think about the traditional way to build a startup, you sort of build some one thing that's going to be able to sell, and then you sort of build around that as you grow. And if you want to have a unifying platform, you can't really think that way, because otherwise you end up in a place where the technology that you build under that one thing doesn't scale. And so, having come from a background where we really understood the problem and we really understood what it took to do this at scale, like Fortune 10 scale, you have to be willing to invest in a platform infrastructure. And that takes a lot of conviction, because you're spending resources, you're spending cash, which is the most precious commodity in a startup environment, to build and secure an infrastructure. We sell to Fortune 500 companies, and so we have to build security infrastructure as a startup that looks like a big company. Big companies spend a lot of resources and money on their security. We have to match that in order to be able to sell to the organizations that we sell to. And that takes, again, continuous conviction as a founder, to lean in to say that is actually the right direction for the company. That's what's going to achieve the mission in the end.
Briefly, and always like to ask a question about AI, seeing as how it's just obviously taking over in many ways. How did the rise of AI affect your mission of the company in some way? Did it affect the product in some way? Is it different from the way it would have been had you started 4 or 5 years earlier. Talk a little bit about that, if it feels comfortable or relevant.
Absolutely. So first, given my experience at working in Xbox, working in Microsoft Windows Security and Defender, and then also leading the product and engineering team at Nest, I had a lot of experience managing teams of people building AI long before generative AI was
Mm.
out, before ChatGPT released. Matter of fact, ChatGPT didn't come out until after we started Olyria. And so when we were starting the company, our mission was to leverage autonomous software AI to manage access. It was literally part of the initial pitch of the company as we were starting the company and seeking our seed round. And so that was the direction we were going. We just didn't call it Gen AI at the time. And now what's happened is the world has sort of dramatically accelerated in this direction of generative AI and agents. And the thing that we think is most powerful is that our platform approach that we believe is the right answer for all of identity turns out to be the right answer for managing access for agents. When you think about an AI agent, the next task that an AI agent needs to do is not known until the agent actually generates the token to decide what the task is. Well, so therefore you can't just provision an agent with access up front because you don't know what it's going to do. You need something that can run side by side with it. And so that requires a very pervasive amount of visibility and control into enterprise access in order to effectively manage AI agent access. And we've really built a platform that enables that because of the conviction we had that this was the right way to do it for all of identity anyway. So the AI has sort of come to us serendipitously, actually.
I wanted to ask a few more questions about sort of your personal journey and how it sort of relates to impressions or advice that other people can learn from, and how they can push forward in their career as well. You there other if there are senior security type folks out there, platform leaders thinking about founding a company as well. What's one thing that they might underestimate about the transition that they don't know they're up for, that you would warn them about?
Well, I think that there are a number of things that everybody thinks that will help them, and they will. Your network will help you. Your previous credibility will help you, especially raising money. If you're, especially in the beginning, you're raising money, your sort of credibility as a leader will help you there. It will help you with customers. People will initially take those calls. That said, I don't constitutionally have the ability to ask somebody to spy something that they don't believe in. So I'm not going to, some founders will be able to build a business on top of, goodwill. I think at the end of the day, you need to be able to show value in the product. I think that the hardest transition that sort of security leaders, especially people who come out from a CISO background, go into is the transition from an operator into a product leader. In my case, I was a product executive before I was a CISO, and therefore I sort of had a career that it spanned both. Going from being an operator into product is a very different transition. And so if you're going to make that transition, which is possible, there are other leaders from that space who have made that transition into startup leadership, it's a big change because understanding how to build a product roadmap, how to actually execute the engineering behind that, and build a business on top of it at the same time is a very different world than what it takes to operate at even a large scale cybersecurity program in a Fortune 500 company.
Did you ever find that you felt discombobulated or out of sorts, and what effect did that have on your life? How did you get through it? Okay.
Well, there have been plenty of times over the last 3 years that I felt discombobulated. I'm blessed that I have an incredible family who is supportive of the journey that I'm on as a founder here. I think, and a network of people both that work with me here at the company and then also outside the company that are supportive. I would say the advice I would give other founders is, the most powerful tool for me has been talking to founders, even founders that I've never met before. I've found this incredible source of support in founders that you just reach out to. You go to a networking event or you reach out to them on LinkedIn who are willing to talk to you about their journey, and they've never met you before. And I do the same thing when people call me. The reality is that there's some camaraderie for people who are on this journey. And I find it amazing that people are willing to provide that support because it can be lonely in this place. And finding that support is a critical part of addressing the discombobulation that you're talking about, because having that and not having someone to talk to is incredibly stressful.
Well, let's fast forward 5 years, and what kind of leader do you want to be known for then? What impact do you hope Olyria has made in the industry? That's the question I want to ask. But also it ties into a question that I ask guests a lot, which usually centers around how do you sort of define success for yourself? Because a lot of folks that we talk to have been around a while, and they're at a certain stage of their career where maybe they're not looking at titles or exits or market share as like the way that they're going to define how successful they are so much. But anyway, I think it all kind of ties in together. Just tell me about where, the next 5 years, where do you like to see the company look like at that point? All of those things.
So if I fast forward 5 years, where I would like to see Olyria is in a leadership position, managing identity for a large part of the large enterprise market, and we're doing that with AI autonomously. That we've made the transition to at least the most sophisticated organizations are in a place where a significant portion of their identity is being managed for them autonomously while they sleep by artificial intelligence. And I believe that transition is possible well within the 5 year time horizon. And so when you transition to sort of what matters to me in terms of my personal success, the things I care the most about are the impact for customers, allowing them to achieve their business outcomes and seeing that industry change happen. I've fortunately had the chance to be a part of a large number of sort of big industry transitions from my time working in digital media to the process of moving from DVDs and physical media to internet streaming of music and video. I'm sort of at the forefront of that. I had a chance to do something very similar with gaming and the advancements in hardware security that now are everywhere, including phones, and then also sort of supporting the transition to a sort of single view of customer service, customer support, customer relationship management, and AI at Salesforce. So I've had a chance to sort of be a part of the wind of a number of big industry-wide changes. And I think this transition to identity being managed autonomously, therefore enabling all of the other autonomous stuff that's going to happen in the industry with AI agents, is the industry change that I see as sort of my the most important impact to me personally. The thing I judge myself maybe the most critically on is how the people that work with me and for me feel about the journey. I've had a number of folks you've told me that they've had a chance in teams that I've led to be able to do the best work of their career or had the most impactful projects that they've worked on. And so we're talking about me and my career. The way I would sort of judge myself as a leader is how people feel about the careers they've had working under my leadership. That feels like the most important thing to me, the most human thing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being willing to jump around between the different, go back and forth between sort of the personal side and the company side and the product and everything, getting technical, but then going back to how you define personal success and all that, because I find that it's the heart of the information and the message that people watching the show like to hear about, and so we like to weave them all together. But Jim, what's the best way that if folks out there who are running a company need to manage their identity of their employees better? What's the best way that they can reach out to Olyria?
Best way to reach out to us is online via www.olyria.com. And if you reach out via that. We'll come and talk to you about what we'll not only talk to you about the solution we have, but you can also find a guide that we've published for manage your entire identity program. So we give it away on the internet. So we didn't just build a solution to do this. We actually realized that organizations need a roadmap, a blueprint for how to do this. And so we actually worked with another group of leading chief information security officers, and I put together a guide that we give away on our website for everyone to sort of assess their identity program and also measure maturity of their program over time, so that they can continue to get better. So we're not just here to sell you something, we're actually here to help you achieve your outcome. And that, whether that's with the solution that we provide or what you need to adapt to grow your organization from a process and people perspective on the inside.